The music was playing softly inside the wedding hall. Guests laughed, glasses clinked, and chandeliers sparkled. But in the middle of all that joy, a storm was brewing. Who let her in here? The sharp voice of an older woman cut through the air. Heads turned. Standing at the entrance was Amara, a black woman in a simple blue dress. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the invitation card, but her chin remained lifted with quiet dignity. At the center of the hall stood Margaret, the groom's mother. She was dressed in diamonds and pearls, her posture screaming authority. She pointed at Amara as if she were an intruder. She does not belong here. Security, remove her at once. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The bride, Sophie, froze, torn between joy and shock. The groom, Daniel, turned pale. He knew this moment was coming, but not like this. Amara's voice broke the silence. Come. Steady. Almost too steady. I was invited. By someone very important. Whispers spread like wildfire. Guests leaned toward one another, hungry for gossip. Margaret's face twisted with disdain. By whom? Who in their right mind would invite you? Daniel's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Amara looked directly into Margaret's eyes. Her words dropped like stones. You already know. The tension snapped through the air. Sophie's hand shook in Daniel's grip. Daniel, what does she mean? But before he could answer, Margaret stepped forward. Her voice rose, echoing through the hall. This is my son's wedding. I will not have it ruined by outsiders. You heard me. Leave. Now. Amara didn't move. Her silence was louder than any protest. She scanned the room, her gaze lingering on Daniel, then on Sophie, before lowering back to the floor. The crowd held its breath, waiting. Suddenly, the hall doors banged open again. A faint rumble shook the ground outside. Guests looked toward the windows. In the distance, bright lights flashed in the night sky, growing closer. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't fireworks. Margaret frowned, unsettled. What is that? Then came the sound. Heavy engines roaring. Wheels grinding against pavement. The unmistakable echo of something enormous landing nearby. Someone whispered in awe. That sounds like a jet. The chandeliers quivered as the engines powered down. The guests rushed toward the glass doors, murmuring in disbelief. Sophie gripped Daniel's arm. Daniel, what is going on? Amara finally raised her head. A soft smile touched her lips, one filled with secrets. Her calm words sliced through the chaos. They are here. Everyone froze. And just as the crowd surged toward the entrance, the deep growl of doors opening from the aircraft echoed through the night. The wedding had stopped. The questions had only begun. Cliffhanger, who arrived on that private jet, and why did Amara seem to know them? The entire hall fell into stunned silence. Every eye was on Naomi, standing frozen at the altar, while Eleanor's words hung in the air like a blade. Leave now, Eleanor repeated coldly, her chin lifted high. This family has an image to protect. A murmur swept through the guests. Some gasped, others whispered, but no one dared to speak against the powerful matriarch. Naomi's hands trembled as she clutched her bouquet tighter, her heart pounding against her chest. Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight. Mother, enough, he said firmly. You will not speak to my wife this way. But Eleanor's glare only sharpened. Wife, she scoffed. She does not belong in this family. She will ruin everything we built. You either choose her, or us. Naomi's breath caught. The ultimatum was cruel, yet the way Eleanor said it was even colder, as if Naomi were invisible. For a moment, Daniel stood torn between his mother's steel authority and Naomi's tear-filled eyes. But then, something shifted. Naomi straightened her back. Though her lips trembled, her voice came out clear. Eleanor, she said softly, you may not see my worth now. But one day, you will. The words stunned the room. A ripple of curiosity stirred among the guests. Who was Naomi really? Before Eleanor could retort, a sudden sound broke through the hall, a deep rumble from outside. The ground seemed to vibrate, the chandeliers above trembling slightly. Guests rushed to the windows, whispering in disbelief. A sleek, black and gold private jet was descending on the private airstrip right outside the estate. Daniel frowned, confused. Who on earth? The jet door opened slowly. Everyone craned their necks. A group of sharply dressed men in suits stepped out, carrying briefcases, their presence radiating power. But then came the shock. An elderly man with silver hair and commanding eyes emerged. The crowd gasped. He was one of the most powerful investors in the country. And he walked straight toward Naomi. Eleanor's confident smirk faltered. No, it cannot be, she whispered under her breath. The doors of the hall swung open. The man entered, his eyes finding Naomi instantly. And with a voice that echoed across the room, he said, "Naomi, my dear. I came as fast as I could." Gasps filled the air again. Guests looked at one another, their faces pale with confusion. Eleanor's hand clutched her pearls, trembling for the first time. Naomi lowered her bouquet slowly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Everyone deserves to know the truth," she said. The crowd leaned in, breathless, waiting for her next words. The guests stared in stunned silence as the powerful man walked straight to Naomi and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. His presence was so commanding that even the security guards at the door froze in respect. Eleanor, her voice trembling now, demanded, why are you here?" The man's sharp eyes shifted to her. "Because Naomi is family to me. And no one." He paused, letting his words slice through the tension. "No one dares humiliate her in my presence." Gasps rippled across the room. Eleanor's face went pale, but Daniel's eyes widened in disbelief. He turned to Naomi, whispering, "What does he mean?" "Family." Naomi's lips parted, but before she could answer, the man continued. "My name is Charles Donovan," he declared, his deep voice echoing against the high ceilings. Everyone in the hall gasped again. Donovan, the billionaire who controlled airlines, luxury resorts, and half the country's shipping industry. A man Eleanor herself had tried for years to impress, but never succeeded. Eleanor staggered backward, clutching a chair for balance. This must be some kind of mistake. But Charles only looked at Naomi with pride. "It is no mistake. Naomi is the goddaughter of my late wife. I promised her mother I would protect her as my own. And I do not break my promises." The room fell utterly silent. Naomi blinked back tears. She had never wanted to reveal this, not here, not like this, but Eleanor had forced her hand. Suddenly, Eleanor's friends, the very women who had been whispering cruel remarks about Naomi earlier, exchanged nervous glances. Their faces flushed with shame. Daniel's voice broke through the silence. "Naomi, why did you never tell me?" Her voice cracked as she replied, "Because I did not want you to love me for wealth or connections. I wanted you to love me for who I truly am." Charles nodded approvingly, his sharp eyes landing back on Eleanor. "But clearly, others here cannot see her worth unless it is tied to money." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor's lips quivered, her usual iron grip over the room slipping away. Then Charles raised his hand. Immediately, the men in suits stepped forward, opening their briefcases. Inside were elegantly wrapped envelopes with golden seals. The guests gasped again as each envelope was handed to them. Confused murmurs filled the hall. "What is this?" one whispered. Charles spoke clearly. "A gift from Naomi's family to every guest here. A token of gratitude for attending." But more importantly, his voice hardened, a reminder that her value was never yours to decide. Eleanor's face flushed crimson, her authority shattered before her very guests. Naomi's tears finally fell, but this time, they were not from humiliation, they were from strength. Still, a storm brewed in Eleanor's eyes. And everyone could sense she was not done yet. The room was thick with tension. Eleanor's face twisted with fury as whispers of shame spread among the guests. She could feel her influence slipping away, and the thought of Naomi being honored, rather than humiliated, burned her to the core. "No!" Eleanor suddenly shouted, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "This wedding cannot continue. Not with her." She pointed at Naomi, her hand trembling with rage. Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Mother, enough. This is my wife. If you cannot respect her, then you cannot be here. Gasps rose from the crowd. For the first time, Daniel had spoken against his mother publicly. Eleanor's breath caught. Her own son, defying her. But before she could speak, the heavy doors of the hall swung open again. A low rumble shook the ground outside. Everyone turned toward the windows, and there it was, a sleek private jet landing on the estate's runway. Guests rushed to the glass, murmuring in awe. Naomi's heart pounded. She knew instantly whose jet that was. The door opened, and a group of uniformed staff escorted a woman down the steps. She was elegant, draped in flowing silk, her presence radiating power. Her face lit up the moment she saw Naomi. "Naomi," the woman exclaimed, rushing forward. Naomi's tears spilled over as she whispered, "Aunt Helena." Eleanor's knees nearly gave out. Helena Donovan, the widow of Charles Donovan, a woman whose influence reached even higher than her husband's. Helena embraced Naomi tightly, then turned to the stunned crowd. "This young woman stood by me during my darkest days. She is more than family, she is the daughter of my heart. And anyone who dares disrespect her," her sharp eyes locked on Eleanor, "disrespects me." The hall fell into absolute silence. Eleanor opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came out. Her carefully built reputation collapsed in an instant. Guests who once flattered her now avoided her gaze. Daniel, voice firm but full of love, took Naomi's hand. "Mother, this is where it ends. If you cannot accept Naomi, you will lose both of us." Eleanor's lips trembled, but the weight of shame pressed down too hard. She lowered her head and said nothing. Helena smiled warmly at Naomi and Daniel. "A wedding is meant to celebrate love, not destroy it. So let us begin anew." The guests erupted in applause. Naomi stood tall, no longer the woman ordered to leave, but the bride who had won not only love, but honor. And as she exchanged vows with Daniel, she glanced at Eleanor one last time, not with hatred, but with quiet strength. Because Naomi knew the truth, dignity is not given by others. It is carried within, and today, the world had finally seen hers shine.